Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. So I spent some time coming up with some new ideas, and because I love team building so much in Genshin Impact, and just in general, coming from the Pokemon VGC background, team building has always been a part of my repertoire. And so this new series will be focusing primarily on how to build teams for the Spiral Abyss, most notably, and how that can better help you to become more successful in the Abyss, as well as other parts of the game such as Overworld and Domains respectively. So if you want to see more team building, more rotation, more analysis, and Spiral Abyss content, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and let's get straight to it. So for this particular Abyss, Hyperbloom and any Dendro type of reaction is really well sought after because a lot of the enemies are weak to Dendro, and therefore you can take advantage of them. So in this case, I've gone with the Ayato Hyperbloom team. This is one of my favorite teams right now because obviously you guys know I'm a huge Ayato fan. I love Fischl as well. But in the case of the analysis part, I have used Zhongli, but we'll get into that in more detail later. So the team overview is pretty simple. Hyperbloom is a team that consists of your Hydro, your Electro, and of course your Dendro unit. And Hyperbloom is a very single target type of reaction because the Hyperbloom effect only hones in on a single target unit, which can make it really useful for bosses like, let's say, the Primal Bishap or the Jade Bloom Terra Shroom. This particular composition is very strong for those types of approaches. Now, the other benefit of Hyperbloom is, of course, you still have your Electro charged, which can still be very viable against large groups of enemies. So that in itself is also a plus. Now, in this case, we have Ayato, Kuki, and as I said, Fischl's out of here. I took her out for Zhongli just because this particular team comp was really good for the Primo Bishap. Now, you can still use Fischl, of course, as I mentioned, so I'll get into that in more detail. So why is this team particularly good in the Abyss? Well, this particular team is great because it covers a multitude of options. As I mentioned, the Primo Bishap is one of the bosses that you will fight on one of the chamber floors, but most importantly, this covers the likes of Ayato just so that he doesn't get interrupted as much during his E. So having someone to shield for Ayato is really vital, especially because, again, the Primo Bishap can also do a lot of damage without you having a shield, and the Jade Plume Terror Shroom can also be quite annoying due to its vast array of attacks. And so why these characters? Well, Ayato, for one, is a very viable Hydro unit who applies Hydro really quickly, and Kuki Shinobu is a great healer, but also a great applicant of Electro, while Kole, being the new Dendro unit in the game, provides a lot of utility with regards to her Floral Ring. So let's get straight into things. We'll jump into the actual Abyss, and I'll show you just exactly why this team is really effective. So I've obviously haven't done all the further testing with the Abyss fully. I'm still trying to like 9-star it, but for the sake of the video, I just wanted to go through things very quickly and show you the enemies that you're dealing with. So when it comes to the Abyss in this particular format, you've got the Ruin Drake Skywatch and the Ruin Drake Earth Guard. These two enemies are really annoying to deal with just because, for one, they're very tanky, and the Ruin Drake Earth Guard, or rather the Skywatch in particular, tends to move around quite frequently due to it being in the air so much. Then the second half, pretty straightforward. You have a lot of enemies to deal with, but this is pretty easy that you can just easily, use Ayato's E and just wipe them out without too much difficulty. Now, for the first half, I did go with another team. I went with my typical Shao team just because it's easier to deal with regards to these Ruin Drakes. I did also try out the Yanfei Virgin team, which look forward to that video very soon as well. But for the for the second half of each chamber, I decided to go with the Hyperbloom team just because, like I said, the Primo Bishap is quite annoying to deal with without a shield, and the Jade Bloom Terror Shroom is very easy to deal with Hyperbloom due to it being stunned when you use Electro attacks or just Hyperbloom in general. So let's go into the actual strategy. and how you actually take care of each of these enemies. So as I mentioned, with Chamber 1, the second half is pretty straightforward here in terms of the enemies. All you really need to do is just make sure you group them correctly. We'll watch a video to obviously analyze more further, but you want to be able to group the enemies as quickly as possible and deal with the Eremite Desert Clearwaters as fast as possible, since these particular enemies tend to stun you, and when they stun you, you're locked in for quite some period of time, which can affect your rotations. Chamber 2, of course, again, just make sure you have a shield. The more, the shield that you have on your characters can obviously apply more damage and therefore allow you to clear the Primo Vivashat boss very quickly. And then, of course, the J Bloom Terror Shroom, as long as your rotations are okay, you should be able to take this thing out really fast. So the pros and cons of this particular team that I do have at the moment, when you look at the team composition, well, the pros, as I mentioned before, are very, very straightforward. You have a team that is pretty well-rounded in that it has a shielder that can shred. You've got consistent electro and hydro application, as well as a great solid utility for Dendro. And the con is that, well, Cole's E is somewhat, I wouldn't say lacking. Her E animation for that matter is somewhat slow, and you can't cancel her E animation, which makes it somewhat difficult at times to do quick rotations. So it's important to be very mindful when using Cole that you give yourself some space away from the enemy. That way you don't get yourself hit and therefore lose out on momentum. And other than that, I don't think there really isn't that many cons. Again, the only real, I guess, quote unquote con is that Hyperbloom is a single target. So you want to make sure that you are applying this Hyperbloom strategy to single targets. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, Electro Charge is still very much there, which means you can still hit multiple enemies with that type of reaction. So that being said, let us jump right into the swing of things and we'll get into the actual video that we'll be analyzing. It's very simple. So we're gonna skip Chamber 1 just because I don't want to show you the whole entire abyss. I'm gonna upload this to my Patreon. So if you want to see the full chamber run in detail, then be sure to subscribe to Patreon. I'll be uploading all of my abyss runs on Patreon moving forward. So if you want to see all that with analysis, be sure to subscribe there. So we'll skip Chamber 1 and we'll go to Chamber 2. This will be for another video, the Yanfei Virgin team. So here we go. So I kick things off with Zhongli, and I'm going to open up my pen so I can actually analyze them even better. All right. So I start off by going for my Q. And from there, I need to rush in with Kuki, apply Electro, go for a Q, and then I quickly apply my Dendro with Cole, just to ensure that I can immediately pop Ayato's Q because it's ready. And the moment I pop Ayato's Q, I'm going for immediate Hyperbloom. So right here, I've positioned myself in a way that gives me the chance to deal damage to this particular enemy right here. Now, the reason why this enemy is really important is because this guy, he always tends to shoot you from behind, which can stun you. But most importantly, it can do a lot of damage because he shoots you multiple times. These two girls right here, I'm trying to position myself where that I can have both of them close together and deal massive damage at once. So my main focus at first is going for this guy and then turning my attention toward these two girls afterward. And so you'll see once we go into the video. So I focus on him, he's gone. So one of the most annoying threats is gone now. Go back to Zhongli. Now, one thing to note here is you know that there was one guy that was standing like at the far end of the actual map. So he's someone I deal with last just because they're not as strong and all they do is just shoot you, but their shots don't really do much to you as much as the other guy. So these Eremite Clearwater girls, be careful with them because they can stun you with their hydro attacks and they go into a certain state where their attacks do more damage. So just be mindful when you are in this abyss. So I rotate back into, see right there. So I got hit there if you watch it very carefully. So I lost my shield here because I quickly used, mistakenly, I quickly used Zhongli's E without charging it. And so I got interrupted here. So this is what I'm talking about. These girls interrupt you so much. So I lost a bit of DPS there. So one of them is dead. I apply my Q again. So I'm using Sacrificial Bow here, just to get more application of Dendro here. And now I apply all my energy toward these guys. Now there's likely a better strategy. If I had an Anemo character, I could likely group them better. So maybe Kazuha would have been a better option. So right there, that was a poor rotation on my end. I did not pay attention to my Zhongli. If I had charged for just a little second longer, I would have been okay to actually swap into my Kuki and use my E effectively. But right there, I lost some DPS. And so these guys are actually just as annoying as before. So this guy, again, as I said, be careful of him. He can also deal so much damage to you. And this new enemy here, he's also a very, very potent enemy that you have to be mindful of, because for him, just like the Clearwater Eremites, he can also stun you with his attacks. And so he's very multi-hitting. So be careful to deal with him first, number one. And then number two, deal with this guy. The Electro guy is pretty straightforward. He's pretty easy. Of course, I'm using Electro Charge, so it's going to be a little bit more time to take him out. But if you were to use this team in particular, then definitely take care of these guys first, and then deal with the Electro Fatui later. So let's go from there. So I go into my Q. Pop my Q for Zhongli. This way it freezes them, it puts them in place, allowing me to reposition. I put my shield on, I attack with Kuki, I use my Q. And then remember, like I said before with Collei, you want to be able to space yourself without putting yourself in danger, because her E can get interrupted very quickly. So it's best to reposition, take some space away, and then apply your E. So right now, again, I'm focusing my energy on this guy because, again, he's very annoying. And plus, he has a pyro with shield, so it's good to just get rid of it really fast. So he's gone. So one of the more annoying threats is gone now. I pop my Q here. So make sure I have my shield ready so that way I don't get interrupted by the guy behind me. Go for my Q again with Zhongli. I apply 2 boomerangs because I'm using Sakbo. And so I get a ton of Dendro application here. Of course, this guy's pretty tanky because I'm obviously using Electro attacks. Now, one good thing about Collei's boomerang is that you can run around and manipulate its movement. And if you have 2 on screen, it's even better that way as well. I go for my Q again, freeze him in place. And I just go to knock him out. And right there. So right there, I could have done better, obviously. I think the first half was definitely much more... I'd say if I had an easier team to deal with on the first half, this would have been an easy 3-star. But I was using the Yanfei Virgin team to test things out. So, of course, it took a little bit longer than usual. But the first half with the Rune Drakes is not that difficult. It's this particular chamber that can be really annoying. But anyway, we'll skip forward and we'll go to the next half, which is a Primo Vishat. So this is a pretty straightforward battle. I don't think this battle is really difficult at all. It's just a matter of making sure that you're building meter before the battle engages, because during this phase, he's actually like not really killable. So it's best to just build meter, and that way you prepare yourself for the real battle that's going to take place. So drop my Q here, and I start applying my damage right off the bat. So right there you see a lot of Dendro cores on the floor. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to apply the Hydro there, but now we apply it. And see right there, do you see how much damage it took by just having a shield? That's something to take note of. So I'll pop my Q again, and we do damage. So do you see how I'm moving around with my Ayato? Ayato is very susceptible to being interrupted, and one thing with the Primavera Shap is that he hits really hard, and he can easily wipe out a shield, even Zhongli's shield if you're not careful. So as you can see, the way I position myself is that I make sure to just kind of weave in and out while still utilizing my E. So he goes for one swipe, dash, one swipe, dash. Then I position with Kuki, I build meter, pop my shield again. And then of course, that was an unfortunate scenario because obviously the Primavera Shap moved out of my queue for Collei, so I missed out on some Dendro application there, which was unfortunate. So something to be mindful of as well, like make sure your spacing is really, really there. So I pop my Q again. Apply shield, because I know he's going to back away eventually. Right here. And this is where you can get more damage. So you blew up again. We got more damage with the Q and the explosion. And this should easily take him out from here. And look at all the Hyperbloom damage. So do you see how Hyperbloom can be so effective when it comes to single target? It does so much damage just because you're applying it to one single target. It's very, very, very clean. Very consistent, I would say, too. So that's the last, or not the last, but rather the second last chamber. So now we're going to go to the final chamber, which is... This one's pretty long, but yeah, here we go. So right here, we go straight in. So I always kick things off with Zhongli because I want to make sure I have my actual shield available at all times. So therefore, the moment I go in, if I'm, let's say, attacked by the enemy, I'm already prepared in my mind to deal with it. So right there, I did it too quickly, unfortunately. And there's a little bit of lag on my end. The server was lagging. But here we go. So with the Jade Plume Terrashroom, applying Hyperbloom on this thing, it puts it into this state. And this is the state you see right here. This state in particular is really important to take note of because the moment it starts screaming, it actually starts to waste its energy. And when it wastes its energy, it collapses. And that collapsing animation gives you a chance to deal a ton of damage instantly. So you'll see very soon. And here we go. So he collapses, and this is where Hyperbloom can be really effective because he can't really move. He's just stunned for a good period of time. So I drop my Q with Zhongli again. Reapply shield. Reapply Hydro. So I missed out on my Collei Q there. I should have popped my Q to get more Dendro application there. But I saved it for my second rotation, which we'll see. I dropped the Q here. Now, I also missed my opportunity to do another boomerang, but it's totally fine. I think one's good enough for the time being. So all these Dendro cores on the floor are exploding. So I go back to Zhongli to pop my Q, do more damage. So again, he collapses, which is really, really good for us. I apply 2 Dendro boomerangs, pop Ayato's Q. Boom, boom, boom. And look how much damage we're doing. We're just doing a ton of damage here. I reposition again because the way this Jade Plume works is the moment it gets back up, you don't want to be in front of it. And the reason why you don't want to be in front of the enemy is because this Jade Plume, he tends to attack from this angle. So you see his head right there. If I was to put myself in this position right here, he would start headbutting you. And so it's best to rotate and be around him and be at his backside. So therefore you can take advantage of it and therefore mitigate and lessen the damage output that you receive. So I try my best, yeah, see? So right there he tries to headbutt you. This is why it's good to be either at the side of it or behind it. So right here, he tried to waste some time. He will run away if you aren't careful. And he does do damage if he runs at you. But he also collapses as well. He goes into like a frantic state. But this right here was GG at this point. And that's about it. So again, I was testing out Yanfei Burgeon, so the time in which I, completed things was pretty long. But I'm sure you get back into the actual kind of wrap up and looking at the team in general to kind of close things off. So let me just close off this epic pen so you guys don't see that. Where is it at the end? Actually, you know what? Let's just keep it open. It doesn't really matter. So there are a lot of different variations that you can do with his Hyperbloom team. As I mentioned earlier in the video, you can do the likes of Kazuha if you wanted to do more grouping, and Kolei and Kuki are still there for utility, as well as Ayato to do more damage. You could also do, as I said, with Zhongli for a shielder, helps to apply more of that elemental shred, and you still have your utility from the likes of Kuki and Kolei. But also you can do the likes of even Yunjin, because Yunjin can also be a very, very viable option, because Yunjin is an incredible 4-star character who can buff the elemental attacks of Ayato, making him much faster on field, and therefore applying your DPS potential even quicker. And of course, being C6, she's also very, very viable in that she buffs your normal attack damage as well. So to close things off, I'll just go into the actual team itself and their weapons and their characteristics, and therefore you can take note moving forward. So I'll show off the team build. Ayato right now is currently running at 9090. He is at 57.8, 190.2, and then he is using the Black Sword R2 artifacts, 4-piece Echoes of Offering with attack, hydro damage, and crit damage. And then Constellation C0 talents, he's 288. And then next we have Kuki. Kuki is at 8090. Weapon, Favonia's Sword R3. Artifacts, she's using the 4-piece Tenacity, Elemental Mastery, and HP. I want to get an EM piece just so I get more EM out of her kit. But for now, EM, HP is the way to go, at least for the time being, until I get a good last circlet. And then we have, oops, sorry, I went too fast there. Then we have Constellation C0. Talents, we have 6, 7, and 6. Next, we have Zhongli. Zhongli, the 8090. 50.5, 128.5 for crit rate, crit damage. Weapons, we have the Catch at 8080 R5. Artifacts, 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Archaic. HP, Geo damage, and crit rate. I'm going for more of a hybrid build. And Constellation C0. Talents, 388. I want to go back to Kuki real quick just to show you her actual crit rate, crit damage. And she's at 27.9, 102.1. And then we have Kolei. And Kolei is 8080 currently. She has a Sacrificial Bow at R2, 7070. Artifacts, we have the attack, Dendro, and crit damage running with the 2-piece Glad, 2-piece Deepwood. The reason why I'm doing this is because she scales off of, or she ascends rather, off of attack. So giving her more attack just means more damage for her personal wise. And of course, running her with the Sacrificial Bow also applies more Dendro and more damage over time. Now at higher refinements, and this is where things get sticky, I recommend running her with R3 or higher. Unfortunately, I only have R2. But anything that's R3 or higher, Sacrificial Bow becomes even more potent for her. So I really recommend going with a Sac Bow if you have higher refinements. If not, you have other options available. And of course, you can always tune into other guides on YouTube to figure that one out. Next, we have artifacts. Again, 2-piece Glad, 2-piece Deepwood. Constellation C0 at the moment. Talent-wise, 1, 5, and 5. I'm still building her, but of course, we'll get there as we move forward. And then I'll show you, of course, Yunjin, just because I mentioned her. And so Yunjin, you have 81 out of 90. Details, you've got 17.8, 86.5. Weapons, Favonia's Lance R2, 60-60. Artifacts, 4-piece Husk of Opulence, running defense, defense, and defense. Constellation C6. Talents, 2, 10, and 10. And then I'll show you Kazuha as well. Kazuha is 80-90. 8.1, 77.2, but of course this is not really important. EM is 722. Weapons, Favonia's Sword. And then you have the 4-piece VV with EM, EM, EM. And then you've got Constellation C0, Talents 577. Still working on them, but we'll get there. And that's about it. So hopefully this video has given you like a better analysis and breakdown as to my thought process going through the Abyss, rotations, positioning, the pros and cons of the team, what's good about it, what's not good about it, and of course Hyperbloom in general. So again, if you've made it this far in the video and you want to see more of this content down the road, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment rather, and look forward to more content, most notably the Yanfei Virgin team, which I'll be making very, very soon. So until next time, take care, folks. I hope you enjoyed this analysis and breakdown, and I'll see you folks on the next video. Peace.